Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our August online seminar and our Vision 2015 preview with our speaker, Mark Perna. So again, thank you for coming out today for how to attract and retain more of the right students. And just a brief introduction about our speaker. Mark Perna is the founder of Tools for Schools in Cleveland, Ohio, a full-service strategic consulting firm whose mission is to share and support every client's desire to make a difference. Mark is a noted expert in generations Y and Z and has for many years been working with Fortune 500 companies and has devoted his career to education and workforce training. He has also done numerous presentations on career and technical education across the U.S. and has recently started writing his first book to help parents, employers, and educators connect with Generation Y and Z. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Mark and begin our presentation. Thank you all again for coming.
Celia, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to share with you in the time that we have, unfortunately the very limited time that we have, as much as I possibly can. So I'm going to move very quickly this afternoon and have a number of slides to share with you and try to walk you through what is possible out there in the marketplace and helping you attract and retain more of the right students in the right programs for the right reasons. This is something we do across the United States and have schools across the country having fabulous results in doing this and being able to attract more of those right students in the right programs for the right reasons. I'll define the right student for you. The right student for career and technical education is that student that is motivated, they're dedicated, they see a light at the end of the tunnel for the particular program, and they actually want to get there. So whether college, high school, career centers, unified school districts, all of those students are students that want to get to that light at the end of the tunnel. And the light at the end of the tunnel is simply this. It's what does their career and their lifestyle look like? What lights them up? What gives them the impetus to go actually through the tunnel with us? The tunnel is the time they spend with us. It's the labor, it's the effort, it's the skill building. All of those things are what set them up to get to that light at the end of the tunnel. And the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today, I'm going to be giving you a little bit of a lot of different areas so that you have a great foundation understanding of how you can be impactful starting tomorrow in taking this information. And I'm going to hold nothing back except for the fact that we just don't have tons and tons of time. If you'd like to know more about what kinds of things and what in-depth best practices are, I will be doing a 4-hour pre-conference at ACT Vision 2015 in New Orleans. It's going to be on Wednesday, November 19th, 8 to 12 o'clock, where I can go through a lot of the things you're going to see here and obviously so much more. First thing is you've got to meet the millennials. You've got to meet the younger generation. And I've done years and years and years of study on the Y and Z generations. And the big difference now is that the Y and Z generations, the youngest generation goes up to the age of 14 today, so they are ready to start coming into high school, but there's no stark difference between a 15-year-old millennial and a 14-year-old Generation Zer. For the first 5 years of Generation Z, so between the ages of, say, 9 and 14 years old, there's going to be kind of a changeover as we get down to this next generation. And the generations are a critical part of our long-term success and truly understanding them. And I'm going to give you just a kind of a quick synopsis of how to deal with this generation and how to get them to perform at a much higher level. First and foremost, I have to say that the millennial generation is the most incredible generation to come down the pike. I think they are the most intelligent, resourceful, skillful, and pitbull-like generation to dawn our doors ever. And some people, when I talk across the country in keynote speeches, that takes them by surprise because I can almost see on their eyes where they're saying to themselves, boy, you haven't met my students, have you? But that is absolutely true. They're a remarkable generation. You just have to understand kind of how to deal with them and how to be able to connect with them. So, you know, the greatest generation gave birth to the baby boom generation. The baby boom generation gave birth to the millennial generation. So 76 million boomers gave birth to 71 million millennials. And the boomer generation, by far the most successful and financially successful and largest generation in history. And when they gave birth to that millennial generation, it became an echo boom generation. And if I could describe that millennial generation and, you know, the first 5 years of Generation Z in one key phrase, it would have to be that experience is everything. They are hungry for experiences. They're looking for experiences with their friends. They want them online. They want to travel the world. They're environmentally conscious. They want to give back. They're constantly looking for ways to have different experiences. And that's critical because that affects how they go through education and even how they go through the workforce. And so we have to be prepared to deal with that. They're the first generation in history to raise friends to family status. They also prefer groups to one-on-one interaction. Even when you see millennials that are out dating, they actually date in groups. It's what I lovingly refer to as pack dating. They're also the most nurtured generation to come down the pike. I'm sure you've all heard of the term helicopter parents. It's those parents who are constantly hovering over their sons and daughters, trying to make sure that everything in their life is going according to plan. And if it's not, they're immediately trying to fix that issue. Here's a stat that blows my mind. Several years ago, Business and Industry was surveyed. Just over 40% of those businesses said that they had had some contact from the parents of millennials they were interviewing for a job. Now, that's pretty nurtured. This generation is also unique, special, and important. Of course they are. Just ask them. They will tell you how unique, special, and important they are. They have customized their entire life around them. They're also the most entitled generation to come down the pike, and that's what I hear from business and industry groups, but I also hear that from educators across the United States. And that entitlement is what I lovingly refer to as trophy kids, because when I was growing up, I played football and baseball, but only the winning team got a trophy. But not in many parts of this country today. You get a trophy just for participating in the league. They also celebrate diversity. According to a 2006 Gallup poll, over 60% of millennials have dated outside of their race. They also have incredibly high expectations of everything in their life except themselves. They also rewrite the rules, and many years ago I nicknamed my oldest son Matthew Dr. Loophole because he could find a legal way around everything we did in the house. And so you're always looking for a way to rewrite the rules. But here's how you deal with them. That was a quick synopsis of who they are. This is how you deal with them. This is what they're looking for in both education and workforce. This is how you mentor them. First off, they are looking for a supportive work environment. That supportive work environment has to come two ways. They have to feel as though they're supported by their superior, but they also feel like they have to be supported by their peer group. If one of those becomes incongruent and they don't feel that support, they will look to leave first chance they get. So those schools that have fabulous retention rates across this country are the ones who are truly have a support from their superior or the teacher, as well as the peer group. They do the kinds of team building and ice breaking that gets students comfortable and helps them succeed at a much higher level. In addition, and this has been an eye-opener for many across the country, is that respect works completely opposite today than it did when I was growing up. I'm 53 years old, but when I was growing up, I respected my superiors first. I respected my teachers. I respected my employers. I did that first, and I worked hard to earn their respect. This generation has it 180 degrees in the opposite direction. They expect you to respect them first, and then and only then will they turn and respect you. Now, the beautiful thing is that once they feel that respect from you, they will turn and they will give you that respect right back. But they've got to feel it from their superior first. And that's a challenge sometimes for older instructors who grew up like I did, where, it was kind of you worked hard to earn someone's respect after you gave it to them, and they expect that now, but it doesn't come quite as easily. This generation also wants formal structure, and when they see a light at the end of the tunnel and they keep focused on that light at the end of the tunnel, then they do want the formal structure. They want to know what the tips for success are. What can they do? What can't they do? And I'm in the process now of connecting some dots together because I want to drive you towards how to get them, how to attract and retain more of the right ones into the right programs for the right reasons. They want lots of challenges, but you have to provide structure. You have to break down goals into steps, and then you have to offer them the information and the resources in order to meet those individual challenges. They do want interactive relationships. They want those both interpersonally as well as electronic. They want to be able to communicate in the classroom and in the workforce exactly the way they communicate at all other times in their life. They do want high expectations placed upon them. Critical part of their long-term success is getting to push them further and faster than you could. So you can give them high expectations, but you've got to get and share with them a vision of where they are going. They need to see a light at the end of the tunnel, or there's no reason for them to go through that tunnel, and that's when there's lackluster performance. You also have to be prepared for demands when dealing with this industry, and the way they make demands is that they complain. Now, this generation, more than any before it, rarely, if ever, feels the branch creak. And I'm using this term because when I was growing up, I used to love to climb trees. Climbing trees was a great deal of fun for me. The higher you went up in the tree, the better off it was. But if you climbed really high up into a tree, you went out on a really firm limb, and all of a sudden that limb cracked, and you just heard it go. There was a four-letter expletive feeling you got right in your belly. At that moment, you had a fear of loss and an amazing sense of urgency. And there were three things that happened at that point. Number one, you became singularly focused. No matter what happened going into that tree, it didn't matter. You were now focused on the challenge at hand. Second thing that happens is you start strategic planning. How are you going to get out of this? How are you going to get back to the safety of the trunk? What are you going to grab? Where are you going to fall? The third thing that happens is you take immediate action, and all three of those things happen in an instant. Well, I'm in the midst of writing my first book, as Celia shared with you, and that book is called Feeling the Branch Creak, and I believe that growth in our lives truly happens once we step outside our comfort zone, almost never when we are inside our comfort zone. But this generation hardly, if ever, feels that branch creak in their lives. See, for the rest of us, don't we feel the branch creak? Anytime there's a fear of loss and a sense of urgency, we feel that feeling in the pit of our stomach. And we focus, we strategically plan, and we take action. But this generation hardly, if ever, feels that. Why is that? It's because they're the sons and daughters of the most financially successful generation in history, and no matter where they sit, upper class, middle class, lower class, poverty, it's really not that bad in their minds. I mean, they can always move back in with their folks. They can always crash at a buddy's house. They can always, find a place to lay their head. And even at the poverty level, there's always things, down there to help support them. I ask teachers this all over the United States. I said, you ever look into the eyes of a student and want it more for themselves, or you wanted it more for them than they wanted it for themselves? And the answer every teacher gives me is, of course we've done that. And you metaphorically wanted to put them up against the wall and say, my God, if you only knew the options and opportunities and things that were passing you by, you'd take action on these things. And they kind of look back at you with that, that little bit of a grin, as if to kind of say, dear woman, if you only knew that I just don't care. And that student, I submit to you, is not feeling the branch creak. I've got a son who went through career and technical education. I am passionate about career and technical education because it has truly affected my own family. My son Nicholas went to North Royalton High School up in the Cleveland area, and he had a 1.5 grade point average his sophomore year in high school, and he was not engaged in any way, shape, or form in his education until the day he walked into Cuyahoga Valley Career Center, which is located in Brecksville, Ohio. And he walked in and spent 30 minutes in a programming and software development program. And when he was done with that program, he came home that night, and he said, Dad, I know what I want to do for the rest of my life. Now, for any of you on the line that are parents, you know the chill that sends up your spine when a son or daughter says something like that to you, because the next thing out of their mouth is either something to applaud or certainly something to try starting to talk them out of it. But he wanted to be, and I said, what do you want to be? He says, I want to be a software engineer. And when he said I want to be a software engineer, I didn't understand what that was, so I put my dad hat on and I asked dad hat question number one, and I said, Nick, what is a software engineer? And he said a software engineer is somebody that works with a customer. He determines what they want out of some new piece of software, and then they write up this big statement of work, which I had never heard that term before. They write up this big report called a statement of work, and they hand it off to the programmers who actually do the keystroking. I said, well, question number two, how much can you make doing this? And he said you can make somewhere between $120,000 and $200,000 a year. So I thought that sounds like pretty good money. I asked question number three. I said, well, how do you get to be that software engineer? And he said, well, I'm going to have to get a 4-year degree in computer science. I'm going to have to get some work history and get some experience. And and then I can go back and get a master's degree and become a software engineer. And so I said, well, that sounds great. Are you prepared to do what it takes to do that? And he said, yes, I am. And truly, it was on that day that his branch creaked, and he went from a dad-driven life to a Nick-driven life, because he now saw a light at the end of the tunnel for himself, and he truly now wanted to succeed at a higher level. And I have always believed that if the want to is strong enough, the how to will come. And with this generation, it comes quickly and swiftly. The key is we have to get them to a want to. We have to get them to see the bigger picture. We have to take them from what I call not knowing what they don't know to knowing what they know and acting accordingly based on that. And that leads us to focusing on the light at the end of the tunnel. The light at the end of the tunnel is a foundational principle that schools across the United States are using in order to get students more focused, and you can get them to a point where they see the vision of what's possible and where they want to go, so that they can get to a point where you can push them further and faster than you could if they saw nothing and they were just going day to day. And it's a critical part of long-term success. And here's the way the light at the end of the tunnel works. There are three key components to it. The first is the career, the second the lifestyle, the third is how much closer they're going down that light at the end of the tunnel. So simply, best example I can give you is a teacher who had 5 years of perfect retention in a 2-year high school program. He had the same number of students accepted into his program sophomore year, were the same students who were still there at the end of senior year, got all of their certification. How did he do it? He simply connected the dots to the light at the end of the tunnel every day. In 1 to 2 minutes, he would tell them, hey, you realize everything you learned today you can do on this kind of job site. You would explain the job site. You realize everything you did today you're going to be able to use this way in your career. You realize that everything you did today you could be an entrepreneur and own your own business. And so he constantly built relevance into what they were doing today and how it was going to be used and what it would look like when they were finished with the program and they moved on. But he's also smart enough to know it's not just about the career, it's about the lifestyle as well. Today, younger generation makes decisions, at least half as much of that decision is based on lifestyle as it is on the actual career itself. And I ask lots of instructors across the country, I said, most people in education understand the lifestyle choice, because if I ask anyone on this line, what's the number one reason people become educators across this country, most everybody guesses and says, so they could get their summers off. Well, that's a lifestyle decision, not necessarily a career one. So he paints the picture for the lifestyle every single day. So he, in that same 1 to 2 minutes, he would say, do you realize that everything you learned today you can do anywhere in the United States you want to live? If you want to live by the ocean, if you want to live in the mountains, if you want to live urban, suburban, metro, whatever you want. And he paints the picture of what that means, that these transportable skills are very valuable to them. He says things like, do you realize that everything you learn today, you can make the kind of money where you can be an entrepreneur, set your own hours, travel the world, give back, and accomplish whatever it is you want to accomplish? He says the one that lights him up the most is when he says, you can make the kind of money where every 2 years you can buy a new truck. And he says their eyes go wide open at that point. And then the third key component to the light at the end of the tunnel is how much closer are they as they traverse down that tunnel? At the end of the first semester in a 2-year program, you're 25% of the way there. He makes sure that in a 15 or 20-minute recap of the career and the lifestyle that he says, you're 25% of the way there. He connects the relevance of the time they have already invested in the program and how they can continue to move down that tunnel for great success. And it's connecting those dots for students, because especially younger generation folks don't really connect that today builds on tomorrow, which builds on the next day, which builds on the next day, and they're actually moving forward and accomplishing something over time. Otherwise, it seems so day-to-day to them. So he connects that dots, and that's how he kept students engaged throughout their whole relationship. But it was at this time about a year ago where a teacher came up to me after doing a keynote address, and he came up to me and he said to me, kind of snidely actually, he said, Mark, I get this whole millennial generation thing. I get this whole light at the end of the tunnel thing. He said, but these kids don't know what they want to do. These students don't know what they want to do with their lives. And he said it in a way that made me believe that he was blaming the students for this. And that really bothered me for quite a long time. And I thought, well, you know what? These students don't know what they don't know. Truly, they think they know, but they don't know. So I kind of thought about that for a long period of time. And then I thought about, well, if these students don't know what they don't know, my son Nick knew. My son figured out that he wanted to become a software engineer, and he was willing to take action based on that knowledge. So my thought process kind of went to, well, if they don't know what they don't know, how do we get more of them to know what they know? And that led us to, something new here at Tools for Schools that we call education with purpose. And I wish I had another hour to go through this in particularly, because this has been getting huge raves across the United States as I'm doing keynote speeches this summer. And I've done probably 15 or 16 of them at this point, and I've got another 12 to 15 over the next, roughly 6 to 7 weeks. But education with purpose is really about a new concept and strategy that we call the career tree. And I can only just kind of touch the surface of this. But if you have an interest in this, I'll be speaking at Vision 2015 on the 19th, and going through this is a big part of that 4-hour pre-conference session that I'm doing. But the career tree simply works like this. I felt we weren't going far enough to the light at the end of the tunnel for students. We were painting a picture, and teachers were being fabulously successful at painting that picture. But what we had to do is we needed another visual to help students climb the tree any way they want. And here's simply how it works, the quick generalization here, is that every career tech program across the country is the trunk of a tree. That trunk leads to a branch system above that trunk system. So those branches, every one of those branches that you see in front of you, it represents a career and occupation that's possible regardless of what additional certifications might be needed or additional education, but it's anything that's possible. Now, I spoke with over 150 instructors over a 3-month period of time around the United States, program instructors, and I asked every single one of them, once they understood the career tree concept, I said, how many branches or careers and occupations would there be in your program tree? Most common answer I received was hundreds. There are hundreds of occupations and careers that are possible. And so I break down the career tree into 3 distinct areas. The first level is the entry-level careers. Entry-level is not synonymous with low pay. Many of these careers and occupations are very, very high-paying, can be very high-paying jobs. Entry-level simply means that once you're done with the program, you could go do these careers and occupations right away. You don't need additional certifications. You don't need additional licensures. You don't need additional, education of any kind. You simply can leave a program, take whatever certifications and licensure you have, and you could go do those things. And that leads to the second level of the tree. The second level of the tree are the technical careers. Those technical careers become unlocked when you get additional education, maybe certifications, maybe it's just additional time at the entry level that allows you simply to unlock that next level of careers and occupations. The top of the tree is what I call the professional careers. These are careers that perhaps you need a 4-year degree or a master's degree or some kind of specialized training, but it's careers that are unlocked. And listen to the word I'm using. I'm using the term unlocked. If you've ever seen a young person play video games, how hard will they work to do what? Yeah, unlock the next level. So these 3 levels are simply unlocked by getting additional education or time to get into those particular career or occupation fields. That's it. There's no direct correlation that you make more money as you move up the tree, and there's no direct correlation that your lifestyle's any better as you move up the tree. So I'll prove it to you. If I wanted to be an electrical engineer, that would be in the electrical tree. That would be in the top level professional careers, because I would need at least a 4-year degree, in most cases maybe a master's degree, to be an electrical engineer. If I was going to be an electrician, I simply need to complete an apprenticeship and then become a journeyman, and that would be at the technical career level in the middle of the tree. Well, in this country, electricians make twice as much as electrical engineers and have no debt, I might add. And so that becomes a powerful part of the tree. And having students actually research what careers are possible, what's the lifestyle associated with it. Again, they have to research both the career and the lifestyle, and it becomes a very powerful way of getting students to see what's possible, how career and technical education expands options and opportunities as opposed to limiting options and opportunities, which is what many people think outside of our career tech world, parents, stakeholders, legislators. So we've got to be able to share a story of here's what's possible and here's how to get there. So to give you an example of this, let's look at an electrical tree. An electrical tree in the entry-level career areas, and I worked on this electrical tree with ABC, with the Associated Builders and Contractors of America, and we actually came up with this. So these are the different branches that would be on that lower level of the tree. With additional education or time, you open up the technical career areas, and these are the kinds of things that you could become: a field engineer, field supervisor, solar power technician, wind power technician. Some great careers and occupations. At the professional career or top of the tree, become a building inspector, a company owner, a nuclear engineer, a project engineer, university professor, workforce development manager. Those are the kinds of things that are available to you. So being able to use the tree, and again, I wish I had, another, 45 minutes to an hour, because there's great depth to the career tree and how we in career and technical education use this to truly paint a picture of the light at the end of the tunnel and truly allow students to figure out what's the right fit in their lives in order to be able to take their career in a direction that's exciting to them based on their unique interests, skills, and talents. So I'm going to leave that here for now, but as a powerful part of this, is that the best part of this is that we have trademarked and copywritten the tree, the image, the look, the terms, so that we could save it for career and technical education across the country before as I'm speaking around the country, my big concern was that other forms of education would try to take that concept, but we have the ability to keep that concept for us. Moving on, connecting more dots. So a student sees a light at the end of the tunnel, but how do you get a student to truly see, of all the things that your particular organization may have? I've got schools that I work with across this country that have 10 programs, 20 programs, 30 programs. I've got some that have 40 programs. How do you take a student to see the breadth of what you do quickly and easily so they can determine what they have the greatest interest in, and then driving that interest into more information? So that's what I call program copy points. And program copy points are simply a way for students to see what experience is possible in a program so that they can see things based on what they do, not on what they learn. Let me give you an example of how this works. Sat down with a culinary instructor quite a while ago now and came up with 3 key bullet points to describe their program. This is what I call the top of the funnel, if you will, funneling the right students into the right programs for the right reasons. You do it with program copy points like this. So work side by side with professional chefs, create gourmet foods with artistic presentation, design cakes and pastries for upscale events. Boom, 10 seconds. Now, this may not be your culinary program where you are, but this was certainly this school's culinary program. And this is how it all connected for students. Does the right student want to do these 3 things? If the answer is yes, these are great program copy points, because if it drives a student to say, hey, that sounds pretty cool, tell me more about this, that's how they catch their excitement for a program. But I'm also a believer in what I call sexy copy points. And I've got schools across the country that say, Mark, these culinary points sound great, but we'd like to take it to another level. And I had a school in Arizona say, Mark, we want to take this up a notch. And here's what they came up with. They came up with craft amazing and fun foods using flames, knives, and creative chemistry. I mean, that jumps off the page. It shows something a little bit different. Work side by side with professional chefs to create gourmet foods, cakes, and pastries with artistic presentation, and be a key part of the team that develops entire meals and unique dining experiences in a full-service dining operation. It's that kind of information that grabs someone's attention, gets them to choose the right program to see when they come out and they visit campus. So program copy points, the program title that you use to call your programs truly matters because that's the first thing someone's going to see. They're going to make a decision on a program and what to get more information on based on the program title. That program title then needs to lead to that first point, which is the most important point, and it's got to be the most experiential. It's got to be the one that kind of jumps off the page. Literally, I've got schools across this country that have 20, 30, 40 programs, and the goal when sharing the different breadth of what they do in a career tech basis, the goal is that they can go out, talk to students, and within 60 seconds, they could pick 2 programs to visit when they come on campus. Keywords to use in this process these are all the good verbs that I share across the country. You know, develop, operate, manage, assess, repair, troubleshoot. All of these things are good. They all paint a picture of what a student does, not what they learn. There's also a naughty list of verbs. That naughty list of verbs looks like this, and it's counterintuitive, but it's anything that sounds educational. If it sounds educational, then you've gone too far. It doesn't connect properly. Again, they don't care what they learn. They care what they do. And then once they like what they do, sure, then you can share with them what they learned. But at that point, you have to grab, their attention. So building on this light at the end of the tunnel, the career tree strategy, part of education with purpose, we now have the program copy points. Now we have what I call consistent persistent, which is simply this. If all of us were sitting outside today, how much rain would have to fall on each of us before we would take action? Taking action might be running for cover, putting up an umbrella, jumping into your car, whatever it is for you. How much has to happen before you're willing to do that? The answer for everybody on this call is it's different. Some of us can stand outside in a thriving rainstorm for quite some time, while others of us 2 or 3 drops and we're running for cover. Well, marketing works exactly the same way. When marketing rain first starts to fall, it's innocuous. Most people don't even realize they're being marketed to. The key for us in career and technical education is that we've got to find ways to drip out our message of value at as little cost as possible, because nobody on this call has an unlimited budget. No, it's like we've got to find ways through open houses and tours and showcases and presentations and conversations and direct mail, and you can see that list in front of you. Every single one of these things is a drip. Every drip has to connect. Anything that makes them think of you, but every one of them has to connect. And you have to make it connect by being bold, personal, and fun. Bold, personal, and fun. And the reason you need that is you want people to remember their interaction with you at any step and any point. People remember 33% of what they read, 50% of what they're told, but 100% of what they feel. And they have to feel good about every interaction throughout your entire organization. Every career tech student goes through this kind of interest chart. Starts in the lower left-hand corner, goes to the lower right-hand corner, and it starts in September, October, November, depending on whether you're a college or you're a high school and open enrollments. But this one is a high school chart. But every career tech student goes through this. September, October, November, you're going up the left-hand side of that chart, and you're starting to get excited. Maybe someone came out and talked to you. Maybe you visited campus. Maybe you came out to a career fair. Whatever it is, you get to a point where you get excited. Maybe you even see the light at the end of the tunnel. January, February, March comes along, and you get pumped up, and you're like, man, I'm all in. I'm all in that program, and you apply for the program. And then in career tech across the country, what happens from that moment to the first day of school? In most places, nothing happens. We have to change that. Ultimately, we have to take this chart from that to that. You've got to get them excited. You have to keep them excited throughout their entire relationship with you. And that takes you to the first few days of school, which many of you are at now. And what happens is if you get someone to see the light at the end of the tunnel, they know where they want to go, they know what branch they're on the career tree, they're excited about their future, and they're ready to go to bat with you, and they come in on that first day of school, you cannot make the same mistake that every school across the country makes, and that is you spend 90% of the first day going over all the rules and why this is a crummy place to be. The aha moment for many around the country has been that students today do not make a 1-year or 2-year commitment to us. They haven't made a 1-year or 2-year commitment to anything in their life. They make a 1-day, 5-day, or 10-day commitment. They make a commitment to give it a try. They make a commitment until the next best thing comes along. And so we've got to kind of reshape this, because the 2 most used words in the history of education on the first day of school are don't and can't. And we have to avoid using negative terms. And sure, I understand you might have to get into some of the rules, but if you could turn them into the tips for success, turn them into how they can take these things and run with it, that's where we want to go. You have to get into some of the curriculum. You have to spend 25% of the first day, if not the first several days. They have to be fun. They have to be engaging. They have to be experiential. It doesn't have to be rah-rah, sis-boom-bop fun, I tell people, but it's got to be team building, ice breaking, getting students over their social anxiety, and fun is the number one overcomer of fear. And then you've got to get them to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And by this, I mean the career tree, getting them to see what's possible, that there's expanded options and opportunities based on their unique skills and interests. And they have the ability to pick something that hits with their career as well as their lifestyle in the sweet spot to keep connected with them long term. Strategic timeline, I recommend to every school and program across the country that you get very acquainted with my dear friend. His name is Jason DJ Famamja, which stands for July, August, September, October, November, and that's simply the timeline for a typical school year. And this timeline has to be developed in a way that you create the drip sequences necessary in a strategic process that connects all the dots together. And simply enough, everything here in blue that you see is on the enrollment track, everything in green is on the retention track, and it's nothing more than creating a drip sequence where one drip leads and builds on the next drip. It has to connect in that way. I walk into schools across this country that are doing fabulous things, but many of them are disconnected. They don't lead to each other. They're not strategic in the way they drip someone through the process in order to be able to connect long term and make a positive decision. Because I believe we are still spending too much time in this profession, and I do believe this is our profession, where we're still trying to overcome those two key stigmas. You know, my son or daughter is not going in a career tech program because they're going to college. My son or daughter is not going in a career tech program because that's where, quote unquote, those students go. And to overcome that, we have to be able to drip effectively our message of value, our message of strength in career and technical education, and be able to walk them through to that first 10 days of school and beyond. You also, as a key part of success, and I'm working down to the end, and I'm happy to take anybody's questions, is that image and that message, being able to develop branding, design, and copy that works together in a bold, impactful way that allows someone to see the breadth of what you do, and it kind of jumps off the page in creating a look of professionalism, because your materials matter. People will judge you based on what your materials look like. If they don't look like a professional organization, people tend to view it as less. And it may not be the case. It may be fabulous what you're doing, but they don't view it that way if they can't see it in the materials and things that you create. So create a powerful image, use whatever logo you've got, and be able to drive that through the marketplace in many different channels, and create the drip sequence that ultimately will get noticed, and people will then attribute that look, that professionalism to your organization. It doesn't take a fortune to do this, but you do have to do it strategically. You do have to do it in a way that connects with students, parents, community, and stakeholders around your country, around your communities. Again, if you'd like to hear more about this, I mean, that was a 40-minute snapshot of things that are going on around the country. If you never saw me again, if you never came to Vision 2015 to this conference, you can take some of those things I just gave you and change the way you connect with students tomorrow. It's all about building relationships. But if you or people in your organization would love to hear more in depth on that, because trust me when I tell you, even 4 hours isn't a lot of time these days. I could go 8 hours on this topic. It's how to enroll, retain, and graduate more Generation Y and Z students at Vision 2015, New Orleans, Wednesday, November 19th, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Get in early. It's usually packed. We always have somewhere between 120 and 150. I think we're going to be pushing close to 200 this year, which is a lot for a 4-hour pre-conference. But get in early. I'm not sure where we're going to cut the line off, but that's where it goes. And this is what I plan to cover at that pre-conference. I'm going to go through the changing landscape of education and workforce development, innovative Generation Y and Z insights, which go beyond what we were able to talk about on this call. Light at the End of the Tunnel, Education with Purpose, the Career Tree, which is a CTE game changer. I didn't have time on this call to go into the true big picture of the Career Tree, but it's huge, and I'll be going through that in depth. Program copy points, getting that initial interest and how do you create them, building the powerful drip sequences and timelines, overcoming CTE's biggest stigmas we just talked about, and in the first 10 days, how do you win their hearts and their minds and push them further and faster than you could and increase performance throughout the year. We're going to talk about the weight factor, pride in our profession, and that will take us the better part of 4 hours to go through all of that, but it should be fun and enjoyable, and I look forward to hopefully seeing some of you there. Please come up and tell me you were on this particular call. So, Leah, that does it for this part of it. I'm happy to take whatever questions we've got, and we're ready to rock and roll.
Thank you so much again, Mark. I really appreciate it, and this was an absolutely amazing online seminar and a preview for everyone who will hopefully be there at Vision this year. So again, all of our attendees have been on mute, but if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, feel free to unmute yourself. And if you have any issues with that, use the chat box to write to me, and I can walk you through getting your audio working. And but for those of you who might not want to do that, we have a Q&A and a chat box where you can ask any of your questions to myself or Mark. So feel free to ask away during this time, and also this is recorded as well. So this will be available within the next few days for anyone who's interested. Thank you all again. Look, everyone's really quiet today, but I'm sure when you have your pre-conference at Vision, it is going to be nonstop, and everyone will be more than happy to ask you tons of their questions. Oh, we actually do have something lined up right here for you. Yes, so the recording will actually be available. We'll put that up on YouTube and promote that through our social media channels. The PowerPoint itself, I know, will be available, but the presentation will be. Okay, well, if there aren't any further questions, Mark, do you have any last comments before we head out?
No, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join in. It was an absolute pleasure.
And thank you so much again. And I think we just got a few more in here at the last minute. Whichever one. Okay, well, I think we are all good to go then. Mark, you have great feedback here. If you want to check out the Q&A, people have been raving about you.
Yeah, where do I check that out?
All right, you should see at the very top of your screen there's a Q&A button, and I think you should be able to see that. Is that available to you?
No. Oh, wait, there it is. Okay.
Yes, so thank you again, everyone, for coming out today, and we hope to see you at Vision New Orleans.
Have a great kickoff to the year, everybody.